Where were you on November 16th? What about your teddy bear? Be careful, if the answer is New York City, it could cost you millions. That's because the plush whereabouts of Billionaires' plush bears and trouts are one of many things New York's 300-plus residency auditors use to prove who does and doesn't owe New York taxes, and from 2013 to 2017 alone, these auditors pulled in $1 billion in revenue for the state. So what tricks do people use to avoid New York's sky-high taxes, and how do auditors call their bluff? To find out, we're going to focus on Miss Priscilla Pennyworth, a woman I've made up who, is getting audited. See, New York residents pay New York taxes on every dollar they earn everywhere that year, while non-residents only get taxed on income earned unequivocally in New York. Ms. Pennyworth's $3 billion annual salary is just $500 million less per year than Michael Bloomberg's, and she would owe over $325 million in state income taxes as a resident. But she says she lives at her mansion in Florida, where there are no personal income taxes. For uber wealthies like her, a residency audit is like a colonoscopy. Law firms that handle them call them, quote, difficult, intrusive, and document intensive, and publish documents like New York residency audits, keys to preventing a nightmare. Meanwhile, the state has published this handy 107-pager detailing their protocol, which my writer was all too happy to read in full. To keep her $325 million, Ms. Pennyworth needs to prove to auditors that New York is not her place of domicile and that she isn't a, quote, statutory resident. In normal speak, that New York isn't her home, vibrationally, and/or that she doesn't spend enough time there to owe taxes. New York, for their part, is determined to systematically poke holes in her I live in Florida story, starting with the domicile thing. Per New York, you might live in multiple places, but you have one home or domicile, proven by actions, not voter registration, driver's license, etc. There are 5 primary factors they evaluate, and the first is your home. There are a few ways to judge this. They might determine Priscilla's New York penthouse is her domicile if it's the largest, most valuable, or most subjectively homey property in her portfolio. On the other hand, if it's sparsely furnished, mostly being used by others, or for sale, they might believe she really moved. And yes, the auditors will visit your home, all your homes if they can. So if you're really worried, set some booby traps. The second main factor is, quote, active business involvement. Priscilla spends a lot of time in Florida, but she still runs Priscilla's Pet Purses in New York, often in person. And she's also on the board of the Met and comes in for their galas as well as other socialite responsibilities. Meanwhile, in Florida, her only real business is remote work for Pet Purses and going to Disney. If you're an auditor, that smells like a New York domicile. But no single factor can prove or disprove domicile, so we continue to 3. Time. Priscilla may only spend 5 months a year in New York, but does she spend more time anywhere else? A couple months in Florida, summering in the Riviera, skiing in Davos, visiting her kids, her parents, safari. It can sure look like New York is her main place. This isn't an absolute rule. If you live in Jersey but commute in for work and frequently stay in an apartment in the city during the week, you've got a good case that Jersey is your domicile anyway. Factor 4 is known as the teddy bear test, phrased as items near and dear. See, Priscilla's family photo albums, childhood teddy bear, current dog, an entire collection of Renaissance paintings with weird babies are still in her penthouse. The taxation department believes you'll keep most of your favorite things in your domicile. If she'd paid an insured carrier to bring all that stuff to Florida, it would indicate to auditors that she'd really moved. But she didn't. Everything she brought to Florida came in a U-Haul, a red flag to auditors that you don't really care about it at all. The last factor is family connections. Basically, where do your spouse and kids live? Once, a wealthy couple claimed they lived, respectively, in New Jersey and St. Croix, but auditors noticed that their kids went to school in New York City, and the mailing address the school had on file to reach the parents was their place in New York. Checkmate. They don't pry too deeply into your family beyond that, but if Priscilla were to have an ailing relative that she moved to Florida to be with, she could make that part of her case. Most likely, the auditors would find that Priscilla was, in fact, domiciled in New York and collect her taxes. But if they didn't, they could still prove she was a statutory resident if she kept a place to live in New York in that tax year and/or spent more than half of the year there. Keeping a place means what they call a permanent place of abode, i.e. somewhere inhabitable, even if not inhabited, by you for at least 10 months of the year. So a heatless cabin in the woods that you could only use in the summer, an apartment under renovation, or a place you rent out to a stranger who wouldn't let you stay the night if you asked, not permanent places of abode. In 1991 and 1992, Martha Stewart tried to claim residency in Connecticut because her house in the Hamptons was uninhabitable due to renovations, but failed because there were pictures of the place looking inhabitable as heck in her magazine, she had an active cable subscription there, and her author bio in a book published that year said, quote, "Miss Stewart lives in Connecticut and New York." The other part of statutory residency comes down to what's called the 184-day rule. If you spend more than half of the days of the year in New York, you're a statutory resident, with a day being any calendar day where you spent a single minute in New York, with exceptions for inpatient medical care and pass-through travel. Auditors will assume you were in New York on any day you can't prove otherwise via flight records, credit card or phone use, toll charges, established patterns, or any other hard-ish evidence. One man, Julian Robertson, got a residency audit for the year 2000, and if they found him to be a New Yorker, he'd owe almost $27 million. He'd left parties by midnight Cinderella style to make sure he was out of the city before the next day started, flew into the city but slept in the suburbs before coming back the next day at 6 a.m. to avoid counting the travel day, and had his assistant keep fastidious track of his days. For 4 of those days in particular, auditors argued he would have to go to ridiculous lengths to avoid the city, but he proved that he was, in fact, ridiculous and got to keep his $27 million. These days, you don't need an assistant to track your days. There are apps out there to record your daily whereabouts, warn you when you're nearing 184, and provide third-party proof of it all to auditors. Yes, there's a whole industry around helping rich people avoid accidentally owing New York taxes. One of those law firms that handle these audits provides a list of tips like not filing for certain tax credits and exemptions, and not suspiciously claiming to change your domicile on January 1st, which no normal person would do. You can also take matters into your own hands, like you can schedule your private jet to land in New York just after midnight to cut a day. Life hack! At this point, it seems, state residency audits are the only thing we, the people, have that make billionaires sweat. So here's my idea. The state starts a day tracking app, charging $20 million a year to use it, billionaires still save money and pay to use it, and we send the cash to the MTA to extend all the trains. Just a thought. And here's another thought. You should check out this video's sponsor, Nebula. It's a streaming service started by a bunch of creators, myself included, and also the single best way to directly support our work. That's what's in it for us, but here's what's in it for you. No ads, no sponsorships, early releases, downloadable videos, and best of all, Nebula Originals. Creator-led projects too weird or too expensive to happen with YouTube's business model. We've got Tom Nicholas's documentary Boomers about the generation that rules us all, Lindsay Ellis's deep dive on the worst Disney ride rebrands, and so much more, including Abolish Everything, a show run by the minds behind HII where comedians debate abolishing society's gravest ills, such as hot doctors, confidence, and the English language. You can even catch some of your favorite creators on Abolish, like Ben and Adam from Jetlag, Dan Toomey from Good Work, Maggie May Fish from Maggie May Fish, and more. So if you want to watch Abolish or any other Nebula originals, or just this same video without the ad read at the end, sign up for Nebula right now. Using my link, you'll get 40% off an annual subscription, so you'll just pay $36 for a whole year of entertainment. Get on it.